Misunderstandings, low trust, low collaboration, less meaningful connection. Is that happening on your team? It's a sign of low social awareness. I want to help you today. Welcome to the Help for Leaders podcast. I'm Stacey Harris. Before we dive into today's episode, click here to subscribe, hit that thumbs up, ring that bell so you're notified each week when we post new content. Social awareness, that's what we're talking about today. We're in the middle of a series on diving deep into all 5 areas of emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence is that ability to understand our emotions, being able to understand how to apply the acumen of emotions and really learn how to communicate more effectively and engage our rational part of our brain. So I've done 2 episodes already on the internal pieces of EQ, the self-awareness and the self-regulation. And today we're going to talk about social awareness, which is that ability to understand the emotional makeup of a team, of a group, and how our emotions impact one another, how we can communicate clarity in the midst of a lot of emotion. And that's what social awareness is all about, understanding the emotions of other people and how they're impacting all of us. And so I want to talk about what it looks like in the workplace, because that's really the application of this tool is in the workplace. And so when we are operating at low levels of social awareness and EQ, we have a lot of misunderstanding that can happen on teams. And we see that quite often because we're just unaware of body language and tone of voice that are happening, kind of those underlying currents to be able to read a room. And especially if we're doing it on a virtual format, when we only see each other, on a screen and we're trying to really hear all of the things that we're saying, can be really challenging. And so it's hard enough when we're in person, but really challenging in that virtual context. And so being able to read emotion, being able to understand what people are not saying, that's a big aspect of social awareness. And so when we're low, again, there can be a lot of misunderstandings because conflict is real. Conflict happens. It's normal. It's a part of human behavior. It's a part of team dynamics. And so when we can understand what's going on, we can help mitigate some of that conflict by pausing, by listening, by staying curious, by leaning in and asking clarifying questions so that we don't have those misunderstandings. But when we're oblivious, when we're just unaware and we just kind of move right past it, people's feelings can get hurt. They can feel really undervalued at work of like, oh, they don't care about me as a person. It's just what I do for this team. And as long as I'm showing up, kind of doing this stuff, that's enough. But that's really not enough for us as human beings. We want to be seen. We want to be heard. We want to feel valued on our teams. And so social awareness is a big part of that. When we're also low in that social awareness aspect, it can impact our ability to trust other people. Do you know trust is something that's earned? And when we do something that breaks trust, it's really challenging on our teams. It's like, oh, I can't depend on them. They let me down. They didn't meet this deadline. They didn't do what they said they were going to do. And trust is broken. And it's hard for us to be able to communicate those needs if we're not aware socially and really able to put ourselves in their shoes and understand what's going on. Maybe it's a personal issue that they're dealing with and it's impacting their work. Do you know that happens a lot? And we need to be able to understand and show empathy and really be aware of what's going on our teams. And then it can also impact us in ways of collaboration where we just don't speak up. We just don't talk about what's going on. I know recently I was working with a team, and it's a new team that's getting to know one another, and they were going through kind of 2 days of really diving deep and doing some strategic planning, and we're hoping to kind of have some of those harder conversations at the beginning, like how we got here and where we're going, and kind of look forward at the end of the meeting. But some hard things came up and they were having some of those challenging conversations, and it really ended on kind of a downward note. And the leader was just really struggling. How do I bring this back around? And so we were able to actually get in there and help them have some of those challenging conversations with their team and get to know each other in a way that really built that trust back to be able to speak up and to share what was going on, and helping each other even understand how emotions were impacting their decision making. The last thing I want to touch on social awareness is really developing meaningful connection. And sometimes I think this is overlooked in the workplace, but it's really a valuable piece to be mindful of. That if we're not developing those meaningful relationships, and I'm not talking about just work related, but getting to know each other personally, that's where we're going to see long-term lasting relationships on our teams. When we're socially aware, when we take interest in each other and really show empathy and concern and care for the individual. And that is a level of EQ that is so valuable, that helps people feel such a part, really a connecting piece. So when we're low in that aspect, we just don't have those meaningful connections at work. And we see people really kind of burning out, not showing up, not doing their best, and maybe even changing jobs because we're just unaware of what's going on. So this is a big part of EQ. It has to do with ourselves and other people. And so if you haven't taken our free EQ assessment, I encourage you to go online, take that assessment. You'll learn all about EQ and maybe a little bit about your social awareness scores as well. Join me next week because I'm going to talk about social regulation. That's the fourth aspect of EQ that we're going to talk about. If you enjoyed this episode and would like more information on emotional intelligence, behavioral styles, or communication, I'd love for you to click here to watch more episodes. And we'd also love for you to click here to subscribe so you're notified each week when we post more content.